give me a call. Like, I've been wanting to talk to you, but it's been forever now. Like, the last time we tried to connect was 2020. And, things were really bad then. They're still bad now. But I feel like we have a lot to discuss.
Well,
I want to know more
I
about
definitely
your
want to be.
story. You've told me some things, via text, but I want to know more. And I'm sure maybe, you have some things to say because of your research.
Well, I tried to click on your Google Drive link
Uh huh.
on your page because it was a pretty interesting breakdown. I was able to access it at one point in time. Now, when I click on it, it says this file is no longer available. So, did you take it down, or is that cyber hacking?
Let's see. You said it was a Google Drive link. What was it for? Because I have a lot of those. I do digital journals and things
Um,
like that. So sometimes they aren't available because they compromise pretty much, the conflict that I'm in with the neighbors. So so which one was it?
it was the one that explains the eugenics projects. You know what I mean? And it was pretty extensive. It was several pages. It contains,
Are you t-
court documents. It contained a vast amount of, like, I guess, information on what you experienced, like things you filed legally in court,
Uh-huh.
and things of that nature. So I wasn't going to brief it, but it's been over a year since I've
Yeah,
gotten a
yeah.
chance to.
Nope. That information, like I said, it may be unavailable now, simply because when things are kept small, and a lot of people are forming against you, you kind of have to watch how much you make visible. So I do have a lot of links, like Google Drive links, that aren't available right now, but they will be soon. It's just a matter of me drawing the type of awareness that the matter needs, because I can't allow them to use it against me. Understand?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. I definitely understand.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're in this war against the authorities of the system that kidnapped us, brought us into slavery, and have forced generations to acclimate to a system instead of uh, doing the appropriate, morally ethical thing, which is to release the offspring from the bondage that they were born into, because we were born into it. If I go randomly and kidnap someone and they're pregnant and they have a child, this was a case not too long ago, I believe, in the state of Utah, and there's children and grandchildren. Well, in that case, in the state of Utah, and I can't remember the guy's name, who had those three girls in his custody, but they ended up having children. They charged him for 4 counts of kidnap because the offspring was born as a kidnapped child. Well, it's the exact same application when it comes to us, but there's no talk of reparations. And because the vast majority of our black community
Mm-hmm.
have been being consciously docile by the, the subliminal antics of those who dabble in sorcery through psychology and other psychosciences,
Yeah.
and not to mention the bio warfare to diminish the brain's capacity. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
no way we should be using 10% of our brain, but
Exactly.
you know,
You.
fluoride in the water, mercury, chemtrails, those things diminish people from operating at their full potential.
Capacity, yeah, absolutely. And it's so weird,
So,
unlike what we're facing, with this gang stalking matter, years ago, a couple of decades ago, when it was the V2K era and these matters were being brought up, they weren't being denied like they are today. Like today, because it compromises so much, people are more willing to deny. Like the robots are actually more willing, they will listen, but they will not do anything.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the most
I
inhumane thing I've ever seen. Like these people will watch you change, like watch your appearance change, completely diminish in front of their eyes, and act like they saw nothing happen because they rather just get by.
well, I mean, last night I was under severe attack. They got me a motel room, and while I was in a motel room, they sent federal operatives in the room next door and below me. Once they moved in below me, they hooked up some sort of machine that sent up microwave frequencies, and of course, they're doing more experimentations and things of that nature, which have they've done TED talks on it. The information is public, although it's conspiracy theory to the ignorant, right? Because
Exactly.
ignorancy just means you're not aware of the information. So, uh, they actually tried to fly me while I was in the bed, and they were doing, their human experimentations. The whole time I was strapped. Now, I did have the option of, like, saying, I'm well trained and well equipped. Just get right
Right.
and lay the hammer down. I mean, that was an option. But what I did was I just said, hey, people,
So wait, let me back.
okay,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Let me back up a little bit. First, your name is Case.
I can't even hear you. Say that again.
I said first your name is Case.
Yeah, they call me Case because it's difficult to pronounce.
Okay.
Instead of,
So what's your
yeah, they call me
name?
Case for sure. It's not difficult to pronounce. I do apologize. I'm smacking and eating peanuts in the face. So
I'm sorry.
my full name.
I don't think you. I, we're getting a little bit of. I'm gonna move into my living room because we're getting some disconnect here. I was asking. So what is your name?
Is Casey Owens.
Case
So
A. Owens.
it's
Okay.
yeah. So the C is say, which my mother wanted to be a little bit different,
Yeah.
and so she that's what she named me. And so I've had issues with that because anytime your name is not up to par acceptable by the European Englishmen,
Right.
that control the standards that they create and say this is the standard. If you have certain names, they've done research studies at different universities. One of the most popular being from Stanford University, where they applied at different jobs randomly online, right, with ethnic names, you know what I mean, like indigenous names, those names that are comfortable with that, you know what I mean, like that we naturally name our children, right?
Yeah.
And then standard American English names. And the
Yes.
profiles would be the same. Okay, the person with a name like Bob or, Karen or Kim or whatever the case may be, Becky, they would get calls back. And the ethical names would get little to no calls. Then they upped the ante. They beefed up the resume on the ethical names and mitigated the qualifications on the European names.
No,
Still
yeah.
the exact same results. So that's the kind of world that we live in. So I tell people, just call me Case. If you mispronounce it, it's perfectly fine. But You know, we
No.
live in a system, and until the system crash, it is what it is.
Right, right. You're absolutely right. Have you heard much or research any about Ennis Legis, like the straw man accounts?
The straw man, of course,
Yeah.
where they
That's what
create
it reminded
a
me of when you
virtual
were
you
speaking
okay that
about your name.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And see, for a long time, you know, they, you know, what I mean, they've misspelled my name over and over again. But you see, when I pull up my birth certificate, that's the name I was born with. You know what I mean? That's my social. I mean, that's my legitimate birth, you know, name. And so I think what happened was with the birth certificate, they create these basically human trafficking as a certificate.
Yeah,
It
it's a
is
bond.
it's a bond, right? Because when we came to, man, you're smart, and let's make it so much easier. We created Wall Street, stock and bondage, right? We were the stock in
Yes,
bondage. They sold slave stock into bondage, and this is where the term stocks and bonds come from. This is the original,
it sure
because
is.
we were the wealth of the nation. You
You're
know, we were the
absolutely right.
sharecroppers. We were everything. And so they used to have something when the dollar standard was backed by GDP, gold, and silver. They used to have silver certificates, gold certificates, birth certificates, because the stock and bonds, which was the indigenous black people who were forced into slavery, were part of those bonds. You know what I mean? That got traded on Wall Street, and the investments was made based on your age, your health, the type of skill set your parents had, and things of that nature, so they could kind of get an idea of how much wealth you would produce with your labor and skill based on that certificate. This is the history they don't want us to know, you
Yeah,
know, and this is the history they don't want us to talk about.
that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. The majority of people, whenever I have these conversations, I can't talk on this level. I got to bring it down to some place that they can understand it, then gradually elevate. But you have,
Oh,
you
tell
know,
me
high
about it.
intellectual quotient.
Tell me about it. Like, and you know what frustrates me? I feel like sometimes I'm talking directly to the demon. And you know, a demon will play stupid with you. They'll act like they don't have any education on anything. And you know, and it just it not only draws things
Well,
out, you know, but it's just it wastes so much time. You know, a demon will never admit.
I mean, for the non-indigenous species, you know, I'll just put it that way because that's how I classify non-indigenous species.
Mhm.
They nature conflicts with their survival. You know, they go out into
Absolutely.
the sun and they get something called melanoma. Too much sunlight with no sunscreen means they're deaf, right? I go out into the sun, I'm just going to get blacker, sweatier, greasier, and shinier, and
Yeah.
more energetic because the melanin in my skin operates equivalent to that of the chlorophyll in the foliage of a tree, or, you know, grass or something. You know, it produces life, it produces oxygen, it converts different particles in my body and activates different types of vitamins, right?
Right.
But for them to do the exact opposite, the oxygen levels that we should have in this world have been changed. The entire Earth grid has been modified for their survival. You know, we think we are breathing fresh air. We have not experienced fresh
Ever.
air in our generation.
Ever.
Um, you know, this is why come growth is stunted. This is why come illnesses take place and things of that nature, because they had to modify the environment to be conducive for their survival. And they do this by spraying chemtrails, um, uh, creating GMOs. This is why Monsanto DuPont is, big play pawns when it comes to lobbyists.
Well, let me ask you.
They control it.
Well, let me ask you this: based off the things that you've identified as the reason why, are you have you ever considered that, because when you talk about eugenics, you have to talk about the science of eugenics, and what's behind biotechnology. So what's behind biotechnology is supercomputer, the application of genetic characteristics and traits that are building these things up. So have you ever considered that possibly, that maybe that, how do I want to say this? That
You just said.
I feel like I did well, and you're educated, so I don't have to, like you said, dummy it down, or bring it to a really.
I'm not educated. I didn't go to college. I just have common sense.
Right.
I'm more aware though.
Right.
Because we couldn't afford televisions when I was growing up, so I don't think my money could do with buying books from the quarter bookstore. And so when people would give away books, she would go by them and say, "Hey, use your imagination." So I had to use that.
And what's funny about that? That imagination is the very thing that they don't want you to use. The imagination is the very thing that they always call a delusion. When you think outside of the box, they call it a delusion, because that's the very means that they're using in order to deceive. Like these things that are very possible. When you imagine, okay, if you're given a subject, how would this be possible? You imagine how it would be possible. They don't want you to think that way.
That's because they're robotic, and you know what I mean. And their thought process is programming, not critical thinking, that they promote through public school institutes. Institutionalization means programming. Sending in
Sure does.
Institute is program.
Yeah.
And so,
and we're all receiving a European, standard education.
Absolutely.
Like it's so insane.
And I've been like this since I was a kid, so I've probably been on the terrorist watch list since I was 4. You know what I mean? Who knows? This is probably like in my life I had so many dots in it,
Absolutely. Like that's how it goes. You know, it's so weird because when I think about my childhood and all the things that I the type of thoughts that I produced then, and versus what I produce now, it was much more advanced, and I think that is a result of mind control. And I also think that you know these things, it's just so inhumane and criminal. Like it's amazing to me with all the information that's out there that no one.
Well, it's satanic. You know what I mean?
It's very satanic.
It's satanic. It's devil. So, like, I try to redefine. To actually, we do the best that we can in order to shape the minds or the paradigm of the minds of the people in our community, because for so long we've had their interpretation of literature and written knowledge, or passed down knowledge or whatever. The devils never was an invisible blob floating from place to place. The concept was what you would call subconscious mind control or mind hacking. You know what I mean? That the devil is a and always have been. It walked, it talked, it did reproduce. And it reproduced with Eve and born offspring, and then that offspring was contrary in nature. And we know that even through their own science, literature such as
They injured right now.
Sigmund Freud, he came up with the concept of, I believe it was Sigmund Freud, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, Darwin. He actually came up with um, the survival theory. Two species competing for survival. One's trying to eliminate the other. You adapt and reform. I'm not sure if you ever read it, but yeah, that's basically what you have. You have two contradicting species competing for the same habitat, competing for the exact same resources for survival, and one will potentially try to eliminate the other. This occurred naturally. So, this is what they know. Now, the problem is the indigenous, our people, they've been done now not to know. There was a point in time in history long ago that they knew, enemy. Post-slavery, and thought re-engineering of the perception of self and life